good svelte shout outs in my talk.
I'm a huge fan. It really brought back kind of the love for web development. Because I got
Yeah.
tired of all of the BS. We
All
good?
that-
We on? Yeah? Good? Justin, welcome to that conference.
Thank
We've
you.
been chatting for just a hot minute, and then I got juicy and I said, let's stop and continue that conversation. Let's just quickly, for those who are watching online, who are you? What's your quick bio? And then I want to answer your question.
Sure. Let's see. Quick bio. My name's Justin Schroeder. It looks like Schroeder,
It
but
does look like Schroeder.
yeah, I don't know.
English
my
is hard.
grandpa said in German it sounds like an A. I don't know.
You said, okay, Grandpa.
Whatever. I literally asked him on his deathbed, "Are you sure it's Schrader?"
Would
Yes.
you get mad if we changed it?
Oh, half my family has already given up on that. Anyway, yeah, I am a software engineer. Been doing it since, oh man, I don't know. I mean, 1999, I think, is when I built my first
so
site.
we both are
Yeah.
professionally started in 98.
Yeah. So me professionally would be a little later because I was like 12 at the time. But
Oh, starting
yeah,
young.
it came a little bit later, and sort of been doing it ever since. I had a brief career flying planes, and realized that was a really terrible career if you want to have a family.
yeah, but you get days off every month.
It's also not very creative. Creative pilots are
No.
dead,
Yeah.
and engineering is surprisingly creative.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, now I am a co-founder of an agency called Braid, and co-founder of a little startup called FormKit, which is an open source project that basically does form authoring. So it's for solving all of the like non-UI problems of your forms, because forms are the worst.
They are the worst, and my
They
whole
are
site
the
is nothing
worst.
but it, and I hate it.
Yes. So we
It's
don't
surprisingly difficult.
we don't support Svelte yet. Right now it's only Vue, but it would solve all your problems.
Yeah, you better hurry up because I got a lot of them.
Yeah, it's solve all your architecture problems, and then we kind of just believe that styling should be up to the people building the site.
Yeah. How do you
so-
feel about Tailwind then?
Oh man, I have a long and complicated history with Tailwind
Yeah.
that would get me probably canceled if I said too much of it on this podcast. I like Tailwind conceptually. I think Tailwind is, unfortunately, and this is no fault to Adam or any of those guys, but is sort of breaking accessibility.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
In part because it's so easy to get going and you never come back to it.
Yeah, it's easy to get. Well,
I mean,
sure, it's easy to get going.
1,000% guilty of it.
So, like a library like ours could effectively solve accessibility in one of the major areas. I think there's really two major areas where accessibility sucks: navigation and your forms.
Yep.
And we can basically solve form accessibility for anybody who uses our tool. In order to do so, we need to ship complicated DOM, the actual structure for each of the inputs, the labels, the help text, all the stuff. And then you get to like a date picker, and it's like, well, now we're shipping hundreds of DOM nodes, right? Well, if you're using Tailwind, you have to be able to touch every single one of those to put your classes on it. So yes, we expose an API to do that, but it took us so much work to be able to build that product that it's no wonder no one else is doing it. Instead, everybody's shipping these headless UI libraries, which aren't inherently bad, but the problem is it puts the onus back on the developer to re-implement all the accessibility and forget about it. I mean,
we just Brett and I mean, we have written our entire site and backend and APIs and the whole thing and multiple domains and authentication. And you take the dumbest of things like a newsletter sign up, and the amount of complexity in that is staggering. Staggering.
It really is.
It's
and as soon as you get to the point where it's like, oh, I want to do that, like a conference attendee. I want to have a button that just says add another.
It is. It is. It's a fresh wound in my head because we needed to redo it, but it's amazing. It's amazing how somebody's been doing web development for a long time. It's amazing how far things have come and gotten so easy, and then how complicated, I mean, especially if you care about your UI, how complicated what something seemingly so simple should be.
Yeah.
And yet it's 2023, and you're
I completely agree. I completely agree. So that, yeah, I feel like forms in particular are just sort of this dirty area of web development.
Dirty.
Nobody wants to deal with it. Nobody really wants to create solutions for that problem. It's not fun. So that's basically what that business is we're trying to have an open source project and then just sell like little UI stuff on top of it to try to support it. But that's me in a long form.
So you mentioned open source. All of our stuff is open source. That's been a journey in itself of, I'll say, hygiene. I'm going to assume that you probably don't get a lot of contributions outside of your own team. But even for us, like managing kind of the train of work that needs to be done, the hygiene of like grooming the backlog versus the shit, I just need to get this thing fixed, has been I would say it's a good thing. I don't do it well.
Yeah.
And then being completely exposed, and somebody comes in, I'm like, listen, it is a hot mess. Like, we try hard, but we've been through multiple Svelte. We went from Svelte regular to Kit to 0 to 0.2, 0.5, 0.7.
You've been on that upgrade path.
And you're like, yeah, we learned a thing, and now we kind of want to shift, but there's still like these broken bones over here and these broken bones over here. And
I hear you.
Pushing all the bones together.
That is rough. The open source thing is good in the sense that it sort of pushes you to actually spend enough time to not be humiliated.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference between our public repositories and our private ones.
Oh. Tell me more about that. Meaning, like, how are you managing, like, when do you make a decision on what's private versus not private?
That's a good question, too. So, for example, we made an interesting decision on the website for FormKit. FormKit itself is an open source project. It's got thousands of stars. You know, people go use it. It looks like all the other ones. The docs for it are actually 2 repositories.
Yep.
There's one of them is Nuxt, and it's a Nuxt 3 build that ingests Markdown.
Yep.
And it's private because we commit sins there. And then there's a public repository with all the markdown files. So people want to go submit typo fixes or something, they can.
Yep.
And so we kind of have that distinction between them across the board. Is, you know, if something is likely shameful, we might keep that one private.
We have all of our API stuff open, but realistically asking anybody to contribute to it is, I wouldn't even bother. Like, it's there for you to look at. Is there to learn? Is there for us to demo? But thinking that you're going to get in and work on a federated graph of this and that's 10 different services and has...
It's unlikely.
Right.
Yep.
Like, much easier, even just kind of having a stage deployment of it. Like, I'm not...
Yep.
Cloud databases, all that. Like, no, it's...
Especially
an
instance
difficult.
Like that. I'm assuming you're talking a lot about the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our whole platform
and the
is
platform,
tied, Everything from the ticket registration, anything that has that on it, we've built.
Sure.
So there's no headless this or Wix that, Shopify this.
It's kind of fun though, owning the whole thing. It's a lot of work.
It is. Yeah, it gives us some creativity too, though. I think
I can tell the difference, by the way. Just
really?
going through your guys' site, I could tell.
Because you're like, oh look, that's broken.
No, that's not why. That's not why. I just, I've built enough sites that I can tell when somebody actually wrote the thing. And it's got a better feel. It feels more polished. You can tell when you're not in some iframe or some Google Doc kind of thing. So, I mean,
Google Doc.
props for that. We get a lot of pull requests and issues filed on our 2 big open source repositories. FormKit, which is the business. I have another one that I wrote called Auto Animate. Actually works with Svelte. And just like automatically adds animations for like when DOM elements are coming in and out of the DOM or you're
that's kind of cool.
Ordering
I've struggled a bit with animations. Not in animations are pretty simple in Svelte, but it becomes easy to overuse.
It does.
And there's times where like I don't want to say a race condition, but like our profile is a pretty good example of it. There's some background checking of like, are you logged in? How can we get kind of pre-populated? You want to present a nice experience and be like,
Sure.
here you go, and this kind of flies in. And it's one of those. We had a little bit out at the bar too, and I was like, cut it. We got to cut it. Like it's causing the very microsecond delay is causing people to they're getting triggered. Like they think maybe it's not working or it's not fast enough, or maybe it hasn't happened yet because it's waiting for Auth0 to come back or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I agree. Overuse of animation is a problem. This is so unlike some of the like complicated framer motion or these fancy libraries. This is supposed to be basically prettier for animation. So you put it on there, and you don't do any configuration. You do nothing else. It just detects through mutation observers and stuff when stuff's popping in, and it does really fast animations. You don't even get to pick the animation.
Oh.
It's already done.
Yeah.
And, it's intended to be like, I wouldn't have used animation on this table for when things get sorted, but now I can have it, and it's helpful.
That's a good use case, yeah.
So people can see where
how
things
it's
are moving.
Changing, yeah.
That one gets a ton of use and traffic out there, and I get pull requests and stuff to it all the time, and I just cannot keep up with it. So it's on autopilot basically.
It's interesting you saying that. A lot of people, and it's kind of how we started this conversation, the keeping up with something. I get a lot of people who think that there's a gigantic crew that runs all of this. And so
it feels that way. I mean, you're to blame for it. Look at this stage.
Well, that's great, except there's not, right? So somebody will be like, yeah, why don't you just have them? I think we have a shared inbox, right? Hello at that conference. And so people will ultimately send something, and they'll ask to be connected with. And I was like, yeah, that's me.
That's me.
If we could just talk to that's me. What about, that's me. Invoicing? Yes, we can send you that too. It's interesting the when things are, I don't want to say spin out of your control, but can't keep up.
Can't keep up.
And then you make this active decisions on what's important, like what needs to be the right thing, and I sweat on that every day.
It's a gross feeling not being able to get back to people.
Yes.
I really don't like it, but sometimes there's not an option. So would you do it all over again? Would you
start a conference?
Start a conference.
No.
Too much?
Nope. Not too much. Right time, right place. We benefited a lot by the fact that we started in 2012.
Yeah.
So the world was different then.
It was.
And obviously the pandemic made the world, I think it's very different now. We're trying to figure out what different means. Because we have our own platform and things, that was intentional, because we can be unique and kind of evolve and change. And I ask a lot of, what does the next 10 years look like? What does it mean to have a speaker, a content creator, a sponsor, this? Because I feel like our collective relationship is different than it was 10 years ago. We didn't have the signal to noise 10 years ago was a lot less. So you come in and talk about something, the exposure to it, the knowledge that was there, those were things that you couldn't necessarily get online. Today, now you can get everything online. Hell, you can get everything. You can sit there and watch Justin from the shitter on the phone, right?
That's right.
But then what does that mean about your relationship here, right? And now we have a quality gate. Yeah. What does good JavaScript mean?
Yeah.
What does good exposure mean? What does investing in one's own personal self kind of mean in this? And then what's the value when everybody's together, right? I didn't ask those questions then. I think I try to coach people who want to start stuff and just give them what we've done. And I go, you need to understand, like, every day's Wednesday. Like, this shit has been going on it's every day.
Yeah.
We work on it every day.
Yeah,
if you want to have the intimacy, if you want to be able to respond to people, realize like then it doesn't stop. So now we're different. Like I wouldn't call us a show. I mean, I guess we are, but it's and the money at this point is not for the faint of heart because it's expensive, right?
Yeah.
Inflation has made things, I'll say, inaccessible for most. You know, are our tickets expensive, relatively speaking? No. But people also think like I'm driving a Ferrari, and it's like, no.
Right.
Like,
oh, sure.
Food is $65 a plate, $50 a plate. Like, it's expensive.
I know. I know.
If you want it, you have to put context around it, right? If you want this experience.
Right.
Could we do a $7 Jimmy John's sandwich in a warehouse off the side of the river? Sure. But that's not really where we're at. So
it's not what people want. I've thought about it a lot too. I mean, I'm not an organizer by any stretch, but what does conference, that concept, look like in sort of this post-COVID age? And I think, you know, some of the organizers I've talked to have said it's almost like a dying breed in the sense that it's harder to get people to come out and stuff like that.
Very hard.
And on the flip side, I think it's maybe more important than ever.
Agree.
And so that's tough because it's like.
And companies only want to pay for the education, but they feel like they can get it on a plural site, and they forget that there's this wealth of collective knowledge of context, which is why I'm so bullish on open spaces, because to be able to ask the question why or how come, that is a different thing than the narrative you may have been fed if you couldn't have just asked that question, because it may send you down a whole different path. I mean, you, owner of, creator of thing, may say, no, this doesn't, that use case there, this would be better because we don't have the time for it and it's not on the roadmap. Are you going to say that online?
Right.
I mean, only if that context is something that kind of comes up. So
that's true. I mean, the hallway track has always been the most valuable part, in my opinion.
I agree.
And so I can see how open spaces is sort of like trying to
just
canonize
a continuation of it.
that a little bit. Yeah.
Formalize it.
I wish there was more that could be done across the board for conferences in general. Just like encouraging organizations to try to get their team out there. Especially your conference would be an amazing place to bring a team of people.
We have some who get it and they do it, and it's a good thing for them.
Yeah.
But there's, like you said, this is the most. I agree as well. It's the most important time that this needs to happen, and it's not for educational reasons.
It's not.
It's for all the other reasons.
Yeah.
It's for people to understand that all these other facets of life. Like I was talking to somebody a little bit ago. We were talking about working from home, and I said, the pendulum swung too hard. Yeah, working from home is great. Should it be your entire thing? No, you need to build rapport with your team.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lot to be said when you know how to work with somebody, even to the point it's like, look, I'm not good at this. Can you take it? I'll take this.
Yep.
How does that happen when you're only ever online?
Not
that it can't happen. It's
a
just
10-second conversation that can take days of productivity to sort.
Right. And, people being given permission to understand that those, those things can happen and should be happening. And it's, like I said, I struggle with it. And not that I don't think, I said, no, I don't think maybe wouldn't have done this again. I don't know if that's entirely true. Probably is the way I'm wired, but it's a needed thing.
It really
Lots
is.
of user groups and things have died, and that's unfortunate too.
Yeah, it's made me like, I don't actually want to become a conference organizer, but it's made me even like think about like, how would I do a conference if I was going to start one now?
Yeah. Because
I just think it's so important. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the legacy conferences that have existed for a long time have not even tried to adapt. And so it's just like numbers are down, and that's that. We got to fight back somehow,
I agree, and I'm trying.
You guys are doing a good job. I haven't been to that conference before, so I don't know what it used to look like, but this is amazing.
We've had our dip. 2019 we had, this place, this part was new. And we filled it. Like, it was jam-packed, and we hit like everybody else. We numbers went down, and they're slowly coming back up. But then there's these things that keep like happening. Oh, tech layoffs. Oh, that got SVB. Like I lost 2 sponsors that week because cash. Nobody knew what was going to happen with cash, so they went away. And
yeah,
I can't blame them.
No.
Like I understand, but then you lose somebody who's been around for a while, and then you realize how the trickle or the downstream effect of that. Right? They pulled out, but they were and I'm using a tertiary example, but if they were the payroll processor, well, all the businesses that they were payroll processing and their money was locked up in SVB.
Totally.
Now they're all having issues.
Yep.
Well, they're two downstream, and that person who maybe was our sponsor, and they're not sure if their payroll processor is going to be able to give them cash because SVB, they're both tied into it, and you're like, oh, the house of cards just fell.
Yep.
Like, got it.
Wow. Yeah.
And then you realize the world is small. Like, oh, yeah.
That is
we should maybe
position.
talk a little bit more.
What do you? Let me ask you. What do you do to encourage people to get out here? Like, you know, I'm curious because it feels like we're in an unstable time from a traditional social media standpoint. You know, you used to maybe just blast on social media a bunch, like, hey, these things are happening, and now we don't. I mean, apart from that, it just feels like there's so much fracturing going on, you know, like, hey, I'm leaving for Mastodon. I'm leaving for Blue Sky. I'm leaving for Threads. I'm leaving for whatever. And now nobody is anywhere.
Yep.
You know, because
I'm gonna argue, I think it's even worse because I think the micro community is a thing. So easy to say Facebook groups, gated thing that you have to go get into. There's a very vibrant ecosystem of Facebook groups. But Discord.
Yep.
Slack groups.
Yep.
You get 50, you know, a 50-person, 100-person, whatnot. I can't join them all by any stretch to say hi,
Nope.
Let alone participate, right, and be authentic about it.
Yep. And people are getting those invites to those private groups based on
Who
Twitter.
They know. Yeah, that too.
Which once that erodes, then there's no like entry point for new people who are trying to be up and comers.
And all of those things are. This still sound bad, but little echo chambers.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So now and I think there's a high degree of value in the fact that they exist, right? You know, they say the riches is in the niches, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a tribe of people. But then to your point about the fracturing above, Threads and Twitter and Mastodon and this and that, so now you have all of these, which are little hybrids of the other things, and it's almost gotten more toxic than ever in each of them.
That's true.
And it's
yeah, I pieced out at Blue Sky real fast. I was in there for a few weeks and was like, this is just another bad echo chamber. I mean, I'll stay on there and every now and then post, but it's like, man, that's not where I'm going to go.
Like, and then so I struggle with it because I think there's a lot of value in the diversity of conversation that happens at like a Twitter. And it got the benefit of being a first. And I also don't think it was ever the community town square like people would like to claim it is. But, you know, at least
it was great for devs.
Yeah, at least there was a place where you could go. You could jump in a conversation or lurk around and say, okay, I can get a different set of opinions kind of in a group and see it.
Yeah.
And that's gone. I should say it's gone. It's just smaller.
Yeah.
And then you can argue, is it becoming an echo chamber because people have left? I don't know. I mean, I think my experience there is fine. I think there's goods in all of them. To your point about getting the word out, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think we're doing a good job about it. Consequently, the last few years, nobody's been talking about something like a conference to the degree I think people were afraid to say or assert that they were doing something in a community for fear of being land blasted by others.
That's right.
Now, I say that because I get the hate mail that we get or have gotten was quite heavy about getting people together and whatnot. I'm of the opinion you're adult, you do your own adult things. Like,
yeah, sure.
I'm not endangering you. You're endangering you. If you feel like that's your thing, right? But that has died down for me. And what I've seen is the conversation about what we're doing, and other conferences too, has gone up. And I feel like it's become a little bit socially okay again to say, yeah, I'm in a group of people and we did a thing without that.
Sure. There's not a judgment on your life choices if you're going to be going to a conference. Yeah.
Which
that's positive.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Positive.
I think it's.
Here's another
if I'm
silver
reading
lining.
the tea leaves right, I think it's great.
Another silver lining. The fact that social is fracturing so much might make another stronger case for these kinds of moments.
That's true.
But it's just a matter of letting people know that it's happening, which is tough. But
or something. I mean, competition is always good. You know, maybe something finally will come that is, I don't say better. I mean, it opens the door for something else to enter. So when there's a high degree of fracturing, and they all kind of look the same, right?
They all do look the same.
They haven't really got to the core of what problems may or may not be. So does that open a door for somebody to try something different? I mean, I've been in Vero, I think I'm saying it right, VERO, quite a bit. Yet another social platform. It's cool, but they got to make money too. Which gets down to, it's like, somebody has to pay for these servers.
Somebody's got to pay for it.
Turns out it's not cheap.
Yeah. No, there's the underlying problem is at the end of the day, it all comes back down to money, and it's funny that open source is so successful, but there's no such thing as like open servers, open hardware, because that's where the money starts happening. I
never even thought about that.
That would solve all the problems
Yeah.
if we could have open source running on some sort of free hardware.
Yeah. That's a very interesting.
But it's not really a thing. Maybe it should be. Maybe there's something there.
But okay, you and I both run businesses. I mean, there is the other side of that says when money is involved, it does raise the level of maturity, right? You have to run a business.
Yeah.
Right? This is great. This is a community. This is a thing. It's also a business.
Right.
Like, I have to do the right things.
Yes.
By you. And some of those things are things like, well, we had to get a lawyer involved that has a waiver, and this, well, it's for your protection and it's also for mine. Right? Those are things you could look the other way and not do and claim we're this, but it's also a business.
Yep.
So not everything, and look, let's be honest. Tech is like the top 10% of earners in the world. Maybe we don't need to be so damn cheap. Like, it's okay to buy a tool or a library from somebody and support that engineering group
100%.
who's giving you value ultimately. At the end
preach,
of the day.
preach.
Well,
that's me.
I mean, drop the $50. Like, come on, stop bitching about it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more about that part. It's interesting, too, that, in open source, you get people from all over the world who are sort of part of your orbit. And so the tolerance for things like, what something costs is very, very different.
Yes.
And we get, typically with the open source business, FormKit, we get no pushback from people in the U.S. in general.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because it's, it's like $100, and for them it's not a big deal. But it is hard for somebody who's making $100 a month.
Yeah. Do you try to do geo-based? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Geo-based.
Yeah, we're trying to do more of that. Yeah, and that's
hard too.
It's hard too. Well, it fundamentally it's better than not making a sale, but from just a purely business standpoint, it also doesn't make any sense if we're calculating this as the price of the product.
Right. I mean, right.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yep.
And then you, of course, service developers who are creative and will figure out how to take advantage of said geo pricing somehow. Oh
man, I could talk another hour about the way that our developer ecosystem tries to smash and destroy all of the companies that exist along the way. I mean, Cypress right now, I think, is getting.
Oh, really?
They're getting hammered because Microsoft has Playwright, which is free.
Oh.
And Playwright's awesome. And to be fair, we're switching most of our stuff to Playwright. It's just good. But it does smell a little bit of the the predatory 90s Microsoft that would buy a company and shut them down. Now all they need to do is create an open source project and shut them down.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that, I think, sprinkled in all over the place. But, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And,
I mean, overall, I think dev is in a better place than it's been in a long time.
Well, I generally think every year it becomes better.
It's getting more and more exciting. There's all kinds of interesting things. I think there's fatigue setting in to some degree with how fast things are changing. But it convinces me more than ever that moments like this, where you're actually sitting in front of people, with people, making relationships, spending time, remembering this isn't just
back
me
to
and
the
a screen.
importance of getting together. Like, we're all flipping humans.
Exactly. And honestly, that solves, like, if somebody gets up on a stage like this and people who are watching this are also sitting behind a screen somewhere, so they can be as angry as they want with me or you about what we're saying. But when you're sitting at a table with them having this conversation,
you have to be respectful.
You have to be respectful, and there's just built-in empathy for what that human is thinking and feeling. That goes out the window, even in a video, you know, even in audio.
Yeah, I often talk about how our role here during things is to set the culture, the behavior. It's our, you're less likely to be an asshole when there's kids running around, right? You naturally want to be a good human.
Absolutely.
For them, all of our people do. Let's put it that way. I know there are assholes out there, but it's that changes the culture, that changes the tone, that changes the interactions, that changes all the little things. And you're right. You are able to pick up on, when you're together, you pick up on different, acoustic space and visuals and the whole nine. And
that's right.
It definitely doesn't happen online.
No, it doesn't happen online.
People try. I give them, we try, but it has to be way more intentional, right? Be way more intentional about grabbing a person online and saying, you have an opportunity to speak too. Wait a minute. Hey, Dave, calm it down, buddy. Like, let's give somebody else an opportunity to chat.
Well, thanks for all you guys are doing here.
Well, thanks for being part of it.
Yeah. No, this was awesome.
Please don't look at my forms. Or do and then say you need a lot.
I'll let you know when Form Kit's available for Svelte.
Yeah, I would love it. Any last parting words?
What
would you give somebody looking back across your tenure in development? What do you wish you would have done differently? Or what do you actively try to work on doing differently?
I think I wish that I had realized how open it was to new entrants earlier on. Like, people right now think that the dust has settled. We thought the dust had settled when MooTools came out, right? Like, you always think that the dust has settled, and now you're just there. And now I'm a very, very small part, but I'm getting to play a part in the new dust that's getting created.
Sure.
And I could have been doing it all along. Could have been doing it all along. And people out there can do it right now, I just talked to somebody who's, involved in a core team of one of the major frameworks in the hallway, and he started in 2020.
There you go. What was the framework?
Svelte.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Gregory?
Yeah.
Yep. I haven't had a chance to meet him yet.
Yeah, we had a great conversation.
Told him, I said, don't look at our site.
Yeah. You're the one that open sourced it.
Yes, I did. Yes. It's my own imposter syndrome of somebody who works so closely in it, and I'm just this beneficiary of their hard work. And
you cannot avoid that.
Well, sir, thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the time, and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.